Good morning, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, back for your first video blog of the day for Saturday, November 8th, 2014, around 7:21 in the morning in Belleville, Massachusetts. Sun just came up, but it's real chilly. Highs about freezing right now, and it's going to warm up to about 50 degrees today. Some news to report: the Boston Celtics beat the Indiana Pacers by a score of 101-98 to win the second game of the year, but bad news for the Celtics. Rookie point guard Marcus Smart hurt his ankle and was carried off on a stretcher. X-rays on his ankle are negative, but he's going to get an MRI. And day to day for Marcus. Hopefully it's not too serious, but it looked gruesome last night, very scary. And also the UMass Lowell Riverhawks tied the Northeastern Huskies by the score of 3-3 last night at the Songus Arena. Another tie for the Riverhawks. They only have one loss this year. They're playing pretty good. They face off against Northeastern tonight at the Matthews Arena, and that game's going to be on the radio, AM 900, ESPN Radio in Nashua, New Hampshire, and 980 WCAP in Lowell. And some history news: 82 years ago today, FDR was voted the 32nd President of the United States. 54 years ago today, JFK was voted the 35th President of the United States. And 26 years ago today, George H.W. Bush was voted 41st President of the United States, beating Michael Dukakis, who was the governor of Massachusetts at the time, pretty easily. That's about it on that. My first subject of the day, is about Ric Flair versus Harley race feud that culminated at Starrcade 1983, a Flair for the Gold. This feud started on June 10th, 1983, when Harley Race beat Ric Flair to win the NWA World Championship for the seventh time at a house show in St. Louis. The NWA's main territory was St. Louis because that's where it was headquartered, and longtime NWA promoter Sam Mushnick controlled St. Louis and stuff, and Harley Race was the face and Ric Flair was the heel in St. Louis because St. Louis was Central States territory, and that's where Harley Race actually invested money in the Heart of America promotion, which was the main promotion of the Central States area, and Ric Flair was the heel, and he was the NWA champion for close to 2 years. And back then, the NWA champion was a traveling champion. They didn't have any set territory they would go to NWA affiliate territories like Mid-Atlantic, Georgia, Championship Wrestling from Florida, Central States, World Class Championship Wrestling, Pacific Northwest Wrestling, Portland Wrestling Territory in Japan, and WWC in Puerto Rico and others. And they had board members, and every year they would vote who would be the NWA World Champion. And on the board for years was Vince McMahon Sr., even though he broke off from the NWA in 1963 to form the WWF in the Northeast section in the United States. He was still respected by many of the promoters in the NWA territory, and he was on the board. He actually casted to decide and vote for Ric Flair to get the NWA World Championship in 1981. So anyway, on to that, Ric Flair and Harley Race start their feud over the NWA World Championship in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. That's where Flair is, that was his home territory. And on the television promotion, Harley Race has a bundle of money in a suitcase, $25,000, and he says on an interview, "I'll give you $25,000 for anybody, wrestler, who could put Ric Flair out of professional wrestling." And he mentions Paul Jones and his army, and Kabuki, and Jack Briscoe, saying, "Take the money. I want Flair out of professional wrestling." Very good interview by Harley Race. That was a classic interview. And a few weeks later on Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, there was an NWA World Championship match between Harley Race and Ric Flair. It was basically a back and forth match until Dick Slater interfered and helped out Harley Race, but Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., who was Ric Flair's friend, was trying to protect Ric Flair and stuff like that. So he dared like Dick Slater to come on in, but then Bob Orton Jr. goes off the top rope and attacks Ric Flair, turning on Ric Flair, and then him and Slater beat up Flair, give him a spike pile driver, and injured his neck. And Harley Race was happy. Bob Orton Jr. took out Ric Flair out of professional wrestling, and they showed the interview in the locker room. $25,000 he got. Very great angle and stuff like that. The next week on Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Ric Flair's in a neck brace saying he had to retire from professional wrestling and stuff. And this was just part of an angle. A few weeks later, at a Mid-Atlantic TV taping, Slater and Orton were in a tag team match, but lo and behold, coming up with a baseball bat was Ric Flair, and Ric Flair says, "We only just begun." He was back and better than ever, and this set up a NWA World Championship match for Starrcade 83, a Flair for the Gold, and they had a press conference in Tampa, Florida, where there were so many NWA delegates, and they were going to announce where the location of the Ric Flair Harley Race Championship match was going to be, and the NWA president at the time, Bob Geigel, announced it was going to be at Greensboro, North Carolina, and it was going to be in a steel cage match. And then they had Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling head promoter Jim Crockett Jr. says it will be a Flair for the Gold, and it will be held Thanksgiving night, November 24th, 1983. And then they had interviews with Harley Race saying that he had some men bidding for him to have the World Championship match in his home territory, but they lost. And he says he doesn't want to spend Thanksgiving night at Greensboro, North Carolina. And Ric Flair interviews and stuff like that. He was pumping up, and they continued to have interviews before the Starrcade 1983 at Thanksgiving. The promos with Flair and Race was very amazing and great promos. This was a build-up to a great feud. And the match between Ric Flair and Harley Race at Starrcade 1983 in Greensboro, North Carolina, the first Starrcade, was held inside a steel cage match. And the special guest referee was Gene Kiniski, former NWA World Champion. Kiniski was close to 60 years old, and the match between Flair and Race in the steel cage match at Starrcade 83 was a very classic match, over 20 minutes and stuff like that, back and forth. Flair put Race in the figure 4 leg lock, but Race got out. Race delivered a running slow shoulder slam, which was a variation of the tombstone pile driver. Shades of The Undertaker, but The Undertaker wasn't even wrestling back then. And then it continues back and forth. Actually, Kiniski was actually like kind of favoring Flair. Sometimes he was getting in Race's face with heel tactics and stuff. And Ric Flair goes on the cage, top of the cage, goes down and beats Race 1, 2, 3, and Gordon Soley says, "He did it! Ric Flair has defeated 7-time NWA World Champion Harley Race." And then he acknowledges it, and then all the face wrestlers, including Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Jay Youngblood, Mark Youngblood, Angela Mosca Sr., and others, all go in the ring and congratulate Ric Flair on winning the NWA Championship for the second time. What I thought about this angle, this was perfectly produced for two great wrestlers, Ric Flair and Harley Race. This was built up to the first Starrcade, which was a success story. Starrcade was the first supercard for professional wrestling that was very big and stuff like that. And you couldn't ask for two great wrestlers in this angle. It's one of the best angles of all time, and that angle was played on the DVD of Ric Flair, the Ultimate Collection, that came out for the WWE in 2003. It's a must DVD for Ric Flair fans. I recommend it for everybody. I think this was the best angle for its time. Well, I'll be back later, Facebook friends and YouTube followers, for 2 more video blogs. One's the classic game show Hot Potato, hosted by Bill Cullen, and the third and final video blog of the night will be about Major League Baseball Hall of Fame announcer Joe Gazziola. Have a good day, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. Bye now.